Hey everybody, and welcome back to our third day of our FarmCon21 coverage. Today we've got 3 sessions that we're going to put into this particular video, and then we're going to have a second video which is going to cover a 30-some minute Q&A session. So in this video, we're going to talk about the build mode that is coming to FS22, new crops, as well as all of the sound improvements that they have put into FarmSim 22. So let's learn about the build mode.
Hi, it's me again, Jos, gameplay developer at Giant Software. I'm here to introduce you to the build mode in Farming Simulator 22. The build mode combines the landscaping and the placement of buildings into one big screen. This allowed us to change the usability, to make it much easier to work with both and to add new features to the game. When creating the build mode, we wanted to focus on the player feedback we got from the previous game. Biggest issue were the input controls. They were too complicated and it was too hard to do what you wanted to do in the game. So we revamped all the controls and changed how landscaping works with new tools. We wanted to allow players to use their creativity to make the yards the way they want with new content. That's why we added hundreds of new placeables. I talked about creativity, but before I talk about buildings, I'm gonna move over because it's too hot here. Much better. Let's talk about hulls. Rudolf Herrmann has provided us with many new hulls of different sizes and functionalities. Some come with solar panels and others with vehicle service points. And they even have different colors. We also have many new storage buildings from Meridian, Unia, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Noiedo. They give storage for seeds, fertilizer, crops and fuel. For the first time ever, we also have branded BGAs from Plan ET. Every map comes with a big static BGA, but you can also build your own using the modular parts. We also have many new animal pens. Some come with buildings from Rudolf Herrmann and some are just a pen. They come in many different sizes and are much easier to place than before. Let's talk about fences. We've added something completely new to the game, placeable fences. They're unlike any other building. You start by placing a pole and just pulling it away, and it will create any fence on any hill. We have added 10 different fences and we have gates. This way you can control who enters and does not enter your yard. I hope you like the new flexibility. We've also added beehives, solar panels and generators that can create a bit of income for you. And of course you can also find the new production chains in the build mode. Let's talk about something else, the big usability changes we made. The biggest changes in the build mode are the inputs, with the controls, the buttons and the keys. We have removed many of them and simplified the way you put down buildings. We made the input much more intuitive by removing many keys so you don't have to remind them all. Every input is context sensitive, so you're not able to rotate buildings that cannot be rotated or rotate fences that rotate themselves. We also made big changes to the sculpting. We added new tools to flatten your terrain and add slopes you control, and on the engine side we made it much easier to control adding and removing ground so that it is easier to make a yard that looks good. Finally, let's talk about modding. We've made big changes in the system that allows for composition of all these features together in one building or in separate buildings. You will be able to make a shed that is a service point and has animals, or has a manure heap and service point. I hope you're excited about this new build mode as I am, and I look forward to seeing the mods you will make and the yards you will build.
Thanks, Jos. We're back here. I'm Ken, the QA lead over at Giant Software. Joining me again is Stefan.
Yeah.
Jos has talked a little bit about the nice things this new build mode can do, and we thought, why not show you a little bit of these new features. So the build mode as a whole is like this complete new interface, as you can already see.
Yeah.
So we have we have the minimap in there. We have different tabs in there. Maybe we want to go over a few of them.
Yeah, so first you have an overview of the buildings. So you have different categories here.
Mm-hmm.
So the first is buildings. So you have the sheds, silos and all that stuff here. Then you have production, so everything for the production chains.
Yeah,
as Marius explained.
Factories, your placeable selling stations, of course, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then you have the animals, so all the pens, from Rudolf Herrmann here. Then the next step would be decorations.
Yeah, Jos talked a little about it in the video. The new fences we can see here, like there's this whole like dynamic system behind it that makes it super easy for us as a player, of course, to place these fences. But there was a lot of work that went into there.
But
that was one of Jos's personal projects. But yeah, we've seen it earlier. We had this is the area where we have our cow husbandry placed already. And if you're a player and say, okay, I have my stuff placed and everything, but I want to decorate a little bit or fence in the area, that is now easier than ever with this new fence system.
Yeah, so I already placed here some fences to have it a bit separated, and also this hedge here.
And gates as well.
Gates as well.
It's not only fences, but you can place gates, of course, that are interactive.
Yeah, so you can open them and close them, and just place here a fence. So you can just click with the mouse, have multiple points, and then if you click on the right mouse button, you finish the fence. So now we would have placed it.
Beautiful, Stefan. Very beautiful. But that's the nice thing. You can like build to whatever your heart's content, basically.
So I'm a really creative guy, you see. But if you don't like it, you can also remove it.
Yeah.
So you got here that function.
Button.
And then you can easily remove everything.
If you misclicked something, it's just easy click to get something back, and then you're back where you started at, basically.
And you can also just remove buildings. So if you click here, I don't want to remove it because it looks really nice, but it's also marked red. So if you click on it, it will just sell the building. So it's way more easy to sell the correct building.
Yeah, if you want to get rid of a silo or a shed, or if you want to, like, let's say if you starting out your game and you only have a small shed because you don't have enough money in the beginning, and now you've made money, of course, then the question is, what am I going to do? But you can easily just remove, and if you remove buildings, you get part of that money back as well, of course, and then just build the next shed level, basically, if you would like it.
Yeah, so you can just here, for example, nice Herman shed, but maybe you don't like it here at that position. You can just
click on the demolish button and
can just sell it,
basically.
Yeah.
And oh, look at that. This is like a perfect example. You built something, you've poured the concrete, the shed is gone. Oh, what are we gonna do now, Stefan?
Yeah, maybe we just seed some grass there. So it's also the great thing about the new construction screen is that we got everything in place.
Yeah.
So you don't need to change the screen to just go to the painting or to the sculpting mode.
We've had the landscaping feature before in FS19, but now it's basically directly placed within the build mode menu, just because it makes sense to have it there.
Yeah, so we can just here put some grass there. Then we got rid of the concrete. And we can also just put some grass here.
Exactly. Paint some grass there. The prices are not final, of course.
Yeah.
These are for demonstration purposes. We can also use we have trees now as well in the game. So if you want to like plant some of these, that's possible.
Yeah, so just decorate it here a bit more so that it looks more beautiful. Yeah, there's also the power line. Yeah. It's maybe not the best way to place them.
That's a safety hazard. That's how I see it.
But you can also just paint plants. So small bushes or grass. Yeah.
Yeah. And as always, if you have any questions regarding the build mode, there's going to be a Q&A always after our presentation, so you'll be able to get those in then. I mean, is there anything else we want to show regarding the build mode? I remember, for example, that now when you press escape, basically to go back to your character, something that was very important for us, because we noticed it while testing, is that wherever you're currently in the world, that's where the build mode should pop up.
Yeah.
And also, so you kind of know, that's why the mini-map is in there actually. So you know that even while moving around in this build map menu with this new camera view, you're going to be somewhere completely different, but to find your way back to where you are and everything, to keep an overview of where you are in the world. That's why all of this stuff is there. So it was important for us to have the player not being ripped out of the whole immersion of where was I currently, where's my farm, looking around, not being able to find their way. So that's a reason, for example, why the map is there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can also see the coordinates here nicely on the map. So yeah, what else can we show? We also have the sculpting here.
Yeah.
So we can also change the terrain here.
Yeah, just like before, you can use your mouse or also with a gamepad to basically use it as a brush and create the terrain and shape the world as you see fit, basically.
Yeah, so the controls are really easy here. So if you just sculpt it here a bit, you can just click with the mouse on painting and then paint it like you want. So it's really a lot more easier than before.
Intuitive. It's all in one place and it makes switching. It's much easier now to spend hours in this one menu and change the map as you want to. All right, I think that's all we want to show for now. New crops in Farming Simulator 22. Sorghum, grapes, and olives. But what makes these new crops so special? Hi, I'm Ken Burgess, the QA lead over at Giant Software, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the new crop types coming to Farming Simulator 22 and how we brought them into the game. We have 3 distinct new crop types for Farming Simulator 22. Sorghum, which is a new grain type, and of course, grapes and olives. These grapes and olive vines can be then placed with our new build mode into the game. So you'll be able to place them in these beautiful rows and then use new machinery and equipment to take care of them and harvest them. We chose these 3 different crop types specifically because, first of all, sorghum is very popular among our US-based players and very big in general in American agriculture. And grapes and olives, on the other hand, they bring something completely new to the game in the way that they're handled and harvested. It's just something that we're not used to in previous parts of the Farming Simulator series entries. Also, they tie in very great with our new production chain system. Bringing new crop types into a game is always a real challenge, especially with something such complex like grapes and olives. We had to think about how are we going to implement these vines and a system behind it. New crop types means new gameplay experiences, new kind of scripts we have to come up with, and also, especially the whole vine system was, we had to think about how are we going to enable the player to place them in the game. And this was actually a very big inspiration behind the whole build mode as we currently have it in FS22, where you're able to place buildings, place vines, and more. Grapes and olives, the whole handling process, the harvesting, and the machinery used, it's all a very new, exciting gameplay aspect of Farming Simulator 22. Our vines in-game have their own collision, so you will have to drive to them with a harvester and manually navigate it across these vines. It'll then shake off the olives and grapes, which you can then of course use to further process them or sell them directly. And you can use specialized sprayers that drive along these vines to protect or also fertilize your vines, of course. As you can see, the width between these vines is about 1 meter to 1.50 meters, and you will be using specialized cultivators that dig along this area. That just helps generally to loosen up the soil so these plants get more water and can grow better. For grapes in particular, if you want them to grow back again, once you've done harvesting your first batch, you will have to cut back these leaves right here. And then in the next year, since you don't have to place the vines again or anything, they will just grow back naturally afterwards. You might be asking, what can you do with all these new crop types? Well, let's start with olives, for example. Olives you can use to either sell them directly at a supermarket or a similar one of our new selling stations, or you can bring it to an oil mill if it belongs to you and process it further into olive oil. Then of course we have our grapes. grapes can be either refined to grape juice, which is perfectly suitable for all ages, or you can further process them into raisins and then bring them to the cereal factory, for example. That will then continue producing them further. And of course with sorghum, sorghum is mostly handled similar to other grain types in the game. So you can sell it at different selling stations. You can use it to feed your animals, such as horses and pigs, or you can use it to bring it to the flour mill, which then in turn can be redistributed to the bakery, for example, to produce bread or cake, which then can be sold for much more gains. So to implement these new vines and also the machinery, we worked very closely with New Holland. That both helped us out tremendously with references for the new machines. They also played a very important advisory role in getting these vines and their design just right, so we can present it to you in a very good way in the final game. Of course, modding is a very important aspect for all of us here at Giants and also the farming simulator community as a whole. So when we set up this new system of vines and how they're placeable and how they all work in the game, we always kept modders in mind. So once the game launches, if you have an idea for a similar fruit that behaves in like a similar way, you can of course use this new system to get that new content into the game easily as well. As you might know, we now have seasons implemented directly into the game. So for the first time ever in Farming Simulator 22, you will have this kind of seasonal growth calendar. And you will always have to be on the watch on when to plant and when to harvest your fruits, such as grapes, olives, sorghum, and of course all other crops in the game. This is optional, of course, you can turn it off, but if you play with it turned on, always be sure to keep an eye on your grapes.
Hello, my name is Chris Caprani. I'm the sound designer here at Giant Software. What am I currently working on? Well, first of all, we're working on the new engine vehicle sounds using our custom engine synthesis tool. So what does the new vehicle audio system actually mean? Well, first of all, the system is completely new for Farming Simulator 22. The audio department has collaborated with the programming team here at Giants to create a bespoke software tool that allows us to apply dynamic audio processing to vehicle engine recordings. This results in vehicle sounds that transform in real time to the in-game environment. So whether you're driving on a flat surface, or you're driving uphill, or you're carrying a trailer that weighs a ton, you're going to hear many changes in the vehicle engine sound to reflect these various situations. The first addition to the new engine sounds is that the vehicle engine recordings and the vehicle exhaust recordings are now processed independently. This means that there's a much more realistic bass response as the RPM level increases. The vehicles now have a much more accurate sonic representation of weight and size. The main new feature of the engine audio system is the implementation of dynamic load processing, which simulates the sound of an engine that has various resistances and loads applied to it. The first step in creating a realistic engine sound was to analyze the sounds of tractors that we have personally recorded. We compared the sound of the exhaust in two different states, offload and onload. Where offload is when the vehicle is stationary and the engine has no major resistance, and onload where the engine has a large amount of resistance, such as whilst pulling a cultivator to cultivate a field. By analysing these two exhaust recordings, we could then isolate the difference in frequency content, or in simple terms, we could take the exact frequencies that make a normal engine sound like an engine under load. Once we had these specific frequencies, we sent the values to our programmer who created an EQ profile within our engine tool. This EQ profile is essentially just an audio process that changes the frequency spectrum of a sound. So, by applying the EQ profile to a normal exhaust recording, we can simulate an exhaust under a large load. But to make the engine load sound more dynamic, within the tool we have defined how much of the EQ profile or how little that can be used, depending on the load of the vehicle within game. At higher loads, whilst going up a steep hill for example, we use the maximum EQ profile, whereas with no vehicle load, no EQ is applied. The load points in between these min and max values are tuned to ensure that the engine sound has sensitivity towards varying loads. During the analysis of tractor engines, we also noticed other sonic changes that can occur when load is applied, one of which is volume oscillation. Especially when operating at higher RPMs and under a high load, the volume of an exhaust quickly moves up and down, giving it a spluttering effect that sounds really cool. This is also simulated within the new audio tool via a low-frequency oscillator that is synced to the RPM of the engine. Finally, we have added some distortion that is directly linked to the load parameters. This adds some nice sounding aggression to the vehicle. Hopefully you can see how the vehicles in Farming Simulator 22 will have a lot of character and life in their sound design. Let's take a listen to some examples in-game. Driving on a flat surface, we can hear the initial load of the engine because it has to use a lot of power to propel the vehicle forward. However, at maximum velocity and with the increased forward momentum, the engine has less resistance, so you hear very little load sound and much more of the transmission sound. As we drive over uneven terrain, we can hear the tone of the engine constantly shift as it adapts to the various changes in load. When using a vehicle in a high load situation, the audio processing will have a much more dramatic effect on the engine sound. The application of maximum load EQ, bass enhancement and distortion all contribute to a more strained and aggressive engine tone. Furthermore, we also have some other sound improvements related to the vehicles in Farming Simulator 22. We have implemented a number of details related specifically to the indoor vehicle perspective, making this perspective much more immersive. Windscreen wiper sounds have been implemented into the new system with accurate spatial information. So, if you are using the indoor vehicle perspective and the vehicle has wipers on the front, side and back of the cabin, you will actually hear the sounds coming from those exact locations. For all vehicles that have manual transmission, we have also added gear shift sounds. For vintage vehicles, we have also added custom filtering and volume adjustments for the audio within the cabin to simulate old cabin technology. Compared with modern vehicles that are featured in the game, the sound within the cabin of a vintage vehicle is less filtered and brighter. To summarize, we've developed a completely new audio engine tool which gives the vehicles a real sense of personality and dynamism. We have a new animation system whereby we can accurately synchronize sounds with the unique animations of the attachments. Finally, we've added some indoor vehicle perspective details such as windscreen wiper, seat suspension and gear change sounds. When we consider that each of these individual elements will be in a constant state of change, all whilst working together in unison, we can say with confidence that the vehicle sound design for Farming Simulator 22 is the most ambitious and realistic in the series so far.
Hi, I'm Nils, one of the audio dudes here at Giant Software. At the moment, I'm mainly working on the sounds for the attachments, meaning the animation sounds for machinery such as grubbers, sowers, trailers, and so on. Today, I'm pleased to be able to show you a little of the new audio attachment system and the options it offers us. In the real world, dumping, retracting, or tilting a trailer creates a huge range of different sounds, such as when a trailer's tailgate opens, or various hydraulic sounds, or what we call the metal impact sounds of metal hitting metal. For us to be able to design these sounds later as realistically as possible, we visited lots of farmers in the area and further afield. so that we have reference recordings that let us know what each attachment sounds like. These reference sounds later serve us as templates for designing the sounds as realistically and authentically as possible. For FS22, our programmers have built us a really cool tool that allows us to trigger multiple sounds at any point during the animation. That's why we've designed a lot of individual sounds that, when played together, create a completely new sound. With the new audio tool, we can essentially decide which sound should play at which time during an animation. Multiple timelines are displayed for us for each attachment, one per animation to be precise, and the timeline corresponds to the duration of that animation. So when we start an animation, a green line moves along the timeline. We can then use coding to select a point in time on this timeline, and set when which sound should play. For example, when starting a trailer's dumping animation, you hear the tailgates opening, the different metal impact sounds of metal hitting metal, and finally the hydraulic sound of the cylinder. In order to be able to trigger the different sounds for extending or retracting a trailer, the coding allows us to effectively enter a direction, meaning that if the green line is moving from left to right in the positive direction, we can select one or more sounds that should play. And if the green line moves in the negative direction, meaning from right to left, a different sound should play. For example, when retracting the trailer, we hear what we call cylinder punches. These are sounds that the cylinder's smaller piston, which comprises several components, makes when it meets the next larger in size. To put it simply, the new audio attachment system means that each attachment will have its own individual sound for each animation. We hope you like the new feature as much as we do. But that's not all. We have another feature for you that makes the driver cabin sounds more realistic and detailed.
Indoor cabin rumble.
When you're driving a tractor or another vehicle, the engine isn't the only thing you hear. You also hear the rattling or shaking of different objects in the cabin, such as the seat, which is constantly moving, or the gear shift, which gently swings to the left and right when driving. In order to imitate these sounds, we've recorded a range of reference sounds in several cabins, and then later use them to design a loop that dynamically changes depending on the terrain you're driving over. Depending on the steering and unevenness of the terrain, the loop sounds more intense or weaker. It's pitched higher or lower, becomes louder, quieter, or even completely silent when driving over smooth terrain. In general terms, you can say that the more uneven the terrain is, the wilder the cabin sounds become. That's it from us audio dudes. Back to Martin.
So we learned a whole lot today in these last 3 sessions. Build mode is a complete overhaul of the placeables area in FarmSim 19. I mean, they did kind of introduce placeables and landscaping to FarmSim 19, and I have to say they have really enhanced that and taken it to the next level in FarmSim 22. In the new crops section, we learned all about grapes, olives, and how we don't plant those, we place them with the new build tool, and I have to say, placing fences has been the scourge of all FarmSim players, right? Now it's simple. You click where you want the end post, you drag it over to where you want the other end post, and the fence just fills itself in. Can't be any simpler. The same is done for basically placing grapes and olives. So that's great to hear. We've got all kinds of production related to grapes and olives. Now, they didn't really talk about taking sorghum and making silage or using it for cattle feed, which I think is how a lot of folks do it here in the US. So we'll just have to see if we get more information about that in the future. And then the sound section. I tell you, if you didn't have your headphones on when the graphic came up that said headphones on, go back, watch those specific segments with your headphones, because the sounds are completely different between just regular speakers and having your headphones on. Let me know in the comments, what do you all think of the new build mode? What do you think of the new crops and placing grapes and olives as opposed to planting them? I was really worried we'd have to use the tree planter to place those. And then what do you think of the new sound design? We're going to come out with one other video for FarmCon Day 3, and that is going to be the second Q&A session, which you kind of see right here. We're going to reset the video and basically start from scratch on that. That video is going to be about 30 minutes, and then that is going to conclude our FarmCon 21 coverage here on the channel. So until next time, happy farming.